Cool. So we can avoid the cliche. We all know that it is a mobile world. It's obviously constantly evolving, though. I'm sure you all remember the good old Snake game. I have a funny story about that. I'll try to remember to mention a little bit later, otherwise grab me afterwards. But the big thing is everything's shifting to a much more interactive space. Couple big numbers from eMarketer. If you guys are lucky enough to have a login, I'm sure you've seen these before. The positive side of it is everything is growing. We've got close to 40% of the world's population are on mobile. A lot of that are sub-Saharan Africa. So I think in markets like the UK, that's pretty saturated already. Huge amount of spend in ads, and it's growing. So a huge number, 2019 and beyond, lots of room, lots of great stuff happening. If we focus specifically on mobile app space, we are seeing growth. It is slowing down slightly, but over 60% from 2018 through to 2020. So still huge opportunity, lots of money coming into the ecosystem. Also, the installs are growing, so that's at around 50% rate. So the level of spend is growing quicker than the number of installs essentially. That'll bring me on to one of my points. With that, it's obviously getting a lot more competitive. More people are coming in. We've got all of the users there, but people are plowing in this, their budgets into marketing, trying to get hold of those valuable users. So it's getting more and more competitive for all of you guys out in the crowd. I do have one cliche for you, though. Improving, it's all about data. Luckily, we have a lot of that. So we track over 1 trillion mobile actions every month. So huge amount of scale that we can pull lots of great insights from. So that leads me to the top 5 trends of 2018 and what they mean in 2019. The first one's pretty obvious, right? There's been a rise in non-organic installs. Seeing huge growth there. Around 60% of our clients on the platform do more non-organic installs than organic. So that's growing phenomenally. There is a huge difference, though, between the gaming world and the rest. Just out of interest, who here is games, who's from another vertical? Oh, games first. Okay, cool. So more from the other side of vertical. Now, the gaming side is definitely way more advanced. I have conversations with, obviously, both types of clients, and games guys just know what they're doing. They are very, very data savvy in terms of performance marketing. So they're using a lot of the data to optimize and to figure out just how to get every single dollar out of their users. So we're seeing three times higher growth in the gaming space of spending on networks and acquiring users. What does that mean for 2019? There's continued challenges in discovery. So we're going to see obviously more non-organics, people trying to get hold of users. I'm sure you all know, kind of going to the store, you don't do it as much as you used to. I used to dive in every Thursday when they updated the apps. I don't do it as much. The app stores are doing a lot to kind of reinvent their stores, but it's still essentially broken, and I don't think that's going to be solved this year. Continued focus on the data and being savvy and understanding just the value of your user and how much you're spending to acquire that user. Nothing's going to change there. I think the exciting part is kind of breaking that organic journey. Right now, a lot of you guys have this huge bucket of organic that you don't really have insights on. You know that they came from somewhere. Maybe it was ASO, maybe it was word of mouth. We're doing a lot of things, and technology is advancing where we can track a lot more of your marketing activity. Web as an example, and getting cross-device insights. We can chat a little bit about that later. But don't go. Don't go. You, don't go. No, I'm only kidding. Retention's still a huge challenge, right? If we look at day 30 retention rates, they have improved slightly, especially on non-organic side of things. We see a 20% increase from 2016 to 2018 in the retention, day 30 retention. Much smaller on the organic side, but we're still looking at 5%. Again, talking about that divide of organic, customers that are in the gaming space and outside, a lot of kind of traditional marketers don't realize that. Like when I chat to them, they want to acquire 1 million users by the end of the year, and they plan their media budget to go and acquire 1 million users, not realizing that 95% of them aren't going to be sticking about after 30 days. So it's a really important point is trying to figure out how to retain users. So some more numbers. We're seeing across the board increased spend in retargeting. A lot of the networks out there are also focusing a lot more on those kind of products, engagement, retention. So we're seeing a lot of investment move into that space. It is kind of separated between, again, shopping and travel, which are leading the space. If you think about the experience, you have a single app and you're trying to retain loyalty on that single app. So we're seeing a huge drive from shopping and travel in that space for retargeting. Whereas gaming, it's still very mixed. We're still seeing a lot of investment into retargeting, but slightly different. Obviously, a game after a year is very different to a shopping app that essentially stays the same, and you're trying to get that loyalty. So we see retargeting kind of in the first year, but year over year, there's obviously a bit of a difference. What does that mean for 2019? Continued focus on shopping. Obviously, a lot of the traditional kind of shopping apps are starting to invest better and heavier in the mobile space as they figure out how to monetize their users. Games, a lot of the games guys are building IP now. It's not just a new title each time. The games as a service. So a lot more investment in retaining users and keeping them kind of on level. I actually don't know in Candy Crush, but I know it's in the 600s or something. Maybe more. Someone probably knows in the audience. Retention, nothing's going to change there. It's still going to be a challenge. I mean, we've obviously got a huge space to grow from 5% on day 30. Lots of room to try and improve that, but still going to be a huge challenge for the year. And then one of the really good points is sharper engagement, segmentation, sorry. So being able to know just how to segment your audience and retarget the valuable ones and kind of letting those users that potentially are a waste of time move on to different apps. So retention is the basis of monetization, and that really is pretty straightforward. If a person's coming back to your app, you have lots of ways to make money from them. If they're deleting it after day one, it's a lost opportunity. Leads me to my third point. IAP is a real challenge at the moment. People want to pay less and less for things, especially on Android. We see that more significant than on iOS. We also see it different between the kind of traditional apps and more in the gaming space. Of course, slightly different business models. Very difficult to try and work out how to put IAP into a shopping app or a travel app. But yeah, we're seeing definitely growth in certain verticals against others. And it's really just a case of figuring out how to build that user experience and how to monetize them. But it's definitely a challenge to keep that IAP growing. For 2019, again, as we mentioned earlier, it's all about data. So the more data points that you can pull out, the better understanding you can have of your users. You can segment, you can understand them, you can retarget, you can go find those lookalikes. So there's just going to be a continued focus of pulling data out of the platform and understanding who to go after. So obviously, IAP isn't the only revenue stream. There's multiple out there. Even the app stores are starting to reinvent themselves to get new revenue streams. And this is where gaming has really kind of cottoned on. For you guys that probably don't know me, I used to work with an ad network many moons ago, and trying to convince game developers to put advertising in their games was very challenging. Now everybody's coming into the space, and that's been from an evolution of the ad units and a lot of different things, but we're really seeing this climb in monetizing your app through advertising. Again, shopping and travel, it's going to be, there's a little bit more of a challenge to place an ad in there. I know you guys would face, some pushback from the business. What are ads doing in here? You're trying to sell something. But it's evolving. And just as in the game space where they once look at ads as a distraction to the gameplay, I think as things evolve, we'll see new ad units, we'll see new experiences, and hopefully, being able to monetize users in multiple ways. So it's obviously slightly different if you look at casual. So those in the gaming space know that hyper-casual is a huge growth at the moment, so we're seeing an explosion there. Obviously, if you start looking at mid-core and strategy, it's slightly different. But yeah, overall, huge growth in tracking ad revenue. So for 2019, continued innovation in the space, I think. There's obviously lots of different things happening, like header bidding coming into the mobile space, but more so on the ad units. I spoke about that Nokia phone at the beginning, and I'm glad I remembered, but this was one of the first guys that I spoke to try get an ad in his app. He literally put a banner right in the middle of that snake. It was that snake, totally skeuomorphic on the iPhone, no revenue model, and he just put a banner in there. Terrible experience, terrible. It was awful. But I got an email from him a year later with him sitting on a Mercedes, and he'd earned $1 million in ad revenue. So even if it looks terrible, there's money to be made there, and things will progress and evolve. And so I think with new ad units, there's a good road ahead for monetizing through ads. Unfortunately, also with growth of UA and monetization, there's also the dark side of advertising. And that's exactly what Jennifer was talking about earlier, and that's fraud. So that's a huge trend also at the moment. If we look at our platform last year, it spiked in July, and that was specifically bots. So there is a huge shift in the types of fraud that comes out. Also, obviously, very different in different verticals. But it does happen to everybody, and also large apps and small apps, so you're not immune from fraud in any sense. It does shift. So we saw device farms were a huge part of what the fraudsters were doing, and it's this constant cat and mouse and high-stake arms race between the fraudsters and us building tools to block that. So I mentioned bots became a huge part of fraud. We obviously built tools to identify that and block it at a platform level. And then we started seeing device farms coming back in a slightly new way. So rather than having this huge farm of actual devices and running through it, it's emulators. They didn't manage to get the same amount of traction with that, but again, more advanced, a new method, trying a different route, probably on a different network, a different ID, constantly evolving, moving from network to network. So it's really important to have those tools in place to be able to identify it and ensure your investment isn't going in the wrong area. One last thing to mention on this is, even though we're blocking it, it is still a huge, significant challenge. 1 in every 4 installs is fraudulent. So lots of work to be done in this space. And I told you I'd speak very fast, so you guys get to go to lunch early. We don't know what it's going to hold for 2019, obviously on the fraud side of things, constantly evolving, but with the right tools in place, you guys should be immune and be able to kind of invest in the right areas. And that was my chat. Thank you.